Hello and welcome to the Commander's Quarters, your Magic the Gathering source that helps you command your budget. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all their support. And also, the Search for the Ancient Bauble Kickstarter has launched, so make sure you go check that out. The Kickstarter campaign will last for 30 days, and after that, the playmat will no longer be available for purchase. Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Quarters studio. Welcome to the show. So we've seen some really crazy and out there things this spoiler season, like the Phyrexian Cauldra Complete. I mean, we've also seen a brand new Elder Dragon in Mardu that is incredibly powerful and is going to dish out a lot of damage and gain you a ton of life. We even saw something I never thought I'd say, but a commander that can make a Black Lotus with Garth One-Eye, and yes, of course, there are ways to use and abuse this. Now, just as Black Lotus is an artifact that I didn't think I'd be talking about during spoiler season, I'm also going to be talking about Sol Ring. Because with the recently spoiled Sol Talisman, the question that I'm going to be answering on this episode is this another Sol Ring? So to find out the answer to that question, let's jump into it. Now, whether you've played Commander for 10 years, or 10 months, or 10 weeks, or even, yes, 10 days, you are probably aware of the card Sol Ring, because it is very much the poster child of the format. It's an artifact that costs 1 and it taps for colorless. So yeah, this is an incredibly overpowered, hyper-efficient mana rock. In fact, it's so overpowered that it's banned in Legacy, even restricted in Vintage, yet somehow it's legal in Commander, but that's a different discussion for a different day. Regardless, again, Sol Ring is essentially synonymous with the Commander format itself. According to EDH Rec, it sees play in nearly 444,000 decks. Or, 78% of all decks. The next most played card is at a mere 52%. Which is still impressive, but yeah, not anywhere near 78. Regardless, when I heard that there was potentially another Sol Ring out there, yeah, I needed to check it out right away. So let's take a look at the newly spoiled Sol Talisman. It's an artifact that has no mana cost, but it has to spend 3 for 1, and by tapping it, you can add colorless. For those of you not familiar with Suspend 3 essentially means rather than cast this card from your hand, you may pay 1 and exile with 3-time counters on it. At the beginning of your next upkeep, remove a time counter. When the last is removed, cast it without paying its mana cost. So, yes, this card does the exact same thing as Sol Ring in that it can tap for colorless. And technically, it costs less than a Sol Ring because its mana cost, well, is 0 since there is no mana cost. Now, though it has less mana cost technically, you can't cast it from your hand and you've got to pay 1 to suspend 3. So in actuality, you are paying the exact same amount as Sol Ring. But there's just one key difference between these two cards. In that you've got to, wait 3 turns to get Sol Talisman out and actually use it. Versus Sol Ring, which you can just play right away. Now, if Sol Talisman is in your opening hand, that can set you up for a big future turn. 3 turns later, you can cast it for free and you're going to be up 2 mana. So yes, in that scenario, it can help you. But 3 turns is quite a bit to wait, especially if you get this later in the game. If, say, on turn 10 you draw a Sol Ring, you can still just, cast it and go up mana right away. But if, say, on turn 10 you draw a Sol Talisman, well, suspending 3, the game might be over by the time you'd cast this. 3 turns is a lot of time to wait. So while this card can be beneficial if you get it early, it can pretty much be a dead card later in the game, and not even too much later in the game. 3 turns is just a ton of time to wait. Speaking of which, let's talk about some comparable cards to this one to see probably around how much play Sol Talisman can be expected to see. And the first one that I want to bring up is Mox Tantalite. Just as Sol Talisman is a callback to Sol Ring, Mox Tantalite is a callback to the Moxen, which are incredibly powerful mana rocks that are banned in Commander. Regardless, Mox Tantalite has to spend 3 for 0 and tap add 1 mana of any color. So unlike Sol Talisman, you don't even have to pay to suspend this card, but you still have to wait those 3 turns to get it out. Now, if the actual Moxen weren't banned and if they were more budget friendly, they would see an absurd amount of play in Commander, much like Sol Ring. But this suspend Moxen is legal, and yet it only sees play in 1% of decks. Again, like I mentioned earlier, the actual Sol Ring sees play in, 440,000 decks or so? This card only sees play in about 3,500 decks. Because, yeah, waiting 3 turns is a lot of time, even when you don't have to pay for the card. So let's talk about the other comparable card with Lotus Bloom. Like Mox Tantalite and Sol Talisman, this one is also a callback to a really old artifact that is extremely overpowered. And of course, with the name Lotus Bloom, this one is a callback to the Black Lotus. You know, that piece of cardboard that costs more than an entire house. That one. Regardless, like the Moxen, Black Lotus is most definitely banned in Commander, but Lotus Bloom is not. And this one follows the same format as the previous 2 that we talked about. It has to spend 3 for 0, and it has tap sacrifice Lotus Bloom at 3 mana of any one color. So again, essentially this is the exact same thing as a Black Lotus, but you've got to wait 3 turns to get it out. If Black Lotus wasn't a banned card in Commander and it was the same price as a Sol Ring, it would see an absurd amount of play. So let's imagine that's the case and it sees playing again around 440,000 or so decks. The suspend version of it though sees less play even than Mox Tantalite at only 3,188 decks. So yeah, being forced to wait 3 turns to cast even arguably the most powerful card in Magic's history is far too much. Now, if these other suspend callback cards and Sol Talisman were suspend too, would that be still fair and playable? Yeah, probably a lot more. If it was just suspend 1, yeah, that would be way too overpowered still, probably. Regardless, they are what they are, and like Mox Tantalite and Lotus Bloom, Sol Talisman is stuck at suspend 3. So my guess is that it's going to see probably around the exact same amount of play as those 2, being at about 1% of decks. Which again is a far departure from the original Sol Ring, which is at 70% higher. That being said, there are ways in Commander to get around the time requirement or to reduce the amount of time it takes to actually cast a card like this. For example, Joyra's Time Bug has tap, choose target permanent you control or suspended card you own. If that permanent or card has a time counter on it, you may remove a time counter from it or put another time counter on it. So obviously we would want to take off a time counter with this. And then Paradox Haze says enchant player, at the beginning of enchanted player's first upkeep each turn, that player gets an additional upkeep step after this step. Essentially, by enchanting ourselves with this, we get 2 upkeeps and 2 time counters are removed. Or how about a card like Brawl's Expertise, which says return up to 3 target artifacts and or creatures to the owner's hands. You may cast a card with converted mana cost 4 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. Again, Sol Talisman has no mana cost, therefore its converted mana cost is 0, so yeah, we can cast it for free with Brawl's Expertise. And while there are certain types of cards like these that can help our Sol Talisman, there are certain types of commanders that can work with it as well. So the first one that I want to bring up is Joyra of the Get-To. She has pay 2, exile a non-land card from your hand, put 4 time counters on the exiled card. If it doesn't have suspend, it gains suspend. Basically, a deck built around Joyra is going to be built on, suspending cards. So many of those decks are going to have cards like Paradox Haze and the Time Bug, so you can get those suspend counters down quicker. So because of that, Sol Talisman might be a good option. Another potential option might be Vega the Watcher. Vega is a 2/2 bird spirit with flying that says whenever you cast a spell from anywhere other than your hand, draw a card. Again, when you suspend a card, you're exiling it first, then casting it from exile when the time counters are removed, so yeah, that applies. So though it is a delayed Sol Ring, it's also now a delayed Sol Ring that draws you a card, and a cantripping Sol Ring can be a very powerful thing. And speaking of a commander that enjoys exile, let's talk about Renar the Ever Watchful. Renar is a 2/3 spirit warrior with flying and vigilance that says the first card you foretell each turn costs 0 to foretell. And whenever you exile one or more cards from your hand and or permanents from the battlefield, create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. So again, by suspending the card, we are exiling it from our hand. And thanks to Renar, when we do that, we get a 1/1 spirit with flying. So again, though we actually have to wait for the Sol Talisman to come in play, we still get a benefit right away. Another potential commander for consideration is one that deals with cascading cards like Yidris Maelstrom Wielder. It's a 5/4 trample, and when it deals combat damage to a player, as you cast spells from your hand this turn, they gain Cascade. So essentially, when you cast a spell, you exile cards from the top of your library into exile a non-land card that costs less. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost, put the exile cards on the bottom of your library in a random order. So if we cast something for more than 0 mana, we can hit Sol Talisman off the top and cast it for free. And if Sol Talisman is the only 0 mana card in the deck, if we cast something that costs 1, then we're basically guaranteed to hit it. So yeah, Yidris is definitely an option. And then another commander that might want to consider it is a commander like Vadrik, Apex of Thunder. It's a 3/3 with flying and first strike, and it says, whenever this creature mutates, you may cast target non-creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard with paying its mana cost. So if we've got ways to discard our talisman or to mill into our graveyard, we can cast it from our graveyard for free with this. Or how about a commander like Shroom the Hegemon, which says, when she enters the battlefield, you may return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So again, whether we discarded it or whether we milled it into our graveyard, we can get it back with this ETB. But now it's time for me to wrap things up and give you my final thoughts on Sol Talisman. And essentially my thoughts are this. Sol Talisman is most definitely not another Sol Ring. Just as Mox Tantalite and Lotus Bloom see almost no play in Commander, Sol Talisman probably won't either. With it being suspend 3 turns is just far too much to wait. Again, yes, early on this can set you up for a big turn, but later on the game this is most definitely a dead card in a lot of situations. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't certain specific commanders that can utilize this card, but it's not going to see anywhere near even a fraction of the play of Sol Ring. But those are just my thoughts, and I could be very wrong, but I highly doubt it on this one. And with that, the show has come to a close, so it's my turn to hear from you, so make sure you comment below and let me know what your thoughts on this episode are, and as always, thanks again and have a good one.